Good afternoon, everybody. Want to welcome you all to today's presentation, Critical Technology Strategies, and we're talking tech today, baby. So I'm very, very excited to have, oh boy, that's a bad picture of me, but that's okay. I got two great panelists today who I'm going to allow to introduce themselves, but the first is Sachs's very own CIO, Mr. Rob Owen. Rob, say hello.
Hey, how are you? It's nice everybody who joined us today. Thank you. Do you want me to introduce myself more than that, or?
I'd love to. I'd love you to. Go for it.
Great. So thanks again, Josh, for setting today up, and our marketing team as well. You guys are all rock stars with this stuff, so it's awesome to be here. I'm Rob Owen. I'm Chief Information Officer over here at Sachs and leader of our Sachs Technology Advisor practice. So for those of you that don't know, the IT team here not only services all of Sachs's internal IT needs, but we also have some kind of burgeoning offerings around what we can bring to the table outside of the firm, right? And why that may be interesting to you is I've been in the industry for the last 25 years. And in my previous role, I spent a long time as chief architect for a very large firm doing consulting for Fortune 50s all the way down to nonprofit entities. So I've kind of seen a lot of this. I like to use the line, I've seen this movie before. And I think bringing that level of expertise to the table here and bringing kind of outside industry experience other than accounting to the table is really valuable. So I'm happy to be here today and excited for the topics that we're going to talk about.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. And also joining us today, returning, Mr. John Burke, CEO of Encompass Digital, a friend and colleague. John, introduce yourself to the group.
So good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're having a great week so far. So I'm CEO of Encompass Digital. We're a consulting and system integration company that works very closely with Rob's Technology Advisory Group. And we specialize in various areas such as strategy, accounting platforms, including ERP, data advisory, privacy, and other things. So excited to be part of the panel and to talk about some of the critical technology issues that are in front of us.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a really good topic for everybody. I'll tell you what, it's a scary topic for me, for somebody who is so involved in the client environment, but technology is kind of this unknown world. I think there's a lot of information out there that people read and think they know. I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there about protection and is my data safe? And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about there is that, I'm a small business or I'm a medium-sized business. I'm not a public company. Is somebody really interested in my data and coming after me? So we're gonna address a lot of these things. We've tried to create a little bit of a structure around what it is we want to talk about, but certainly knowing this group and knowing my own questions that I'm going to have, we're probably going to go a little bit all over the place, but that's okay. So we're going to focus on key areas. One, certainly keeping your data safe, improving your technology infrastructure, and embracing AI and ERP software. And a lot of this is all about keeping your secrets safe, keeping your data safe, but at the same time scaling for growth, right? I think when I sit back and look at how we run the firm day to day, technology has become one of our biggest areas of investment. And as the firm continues to grow, it's only going to be bigger and bigger. So we're certainly learning along the way, and for that, we're very happy to have Rob being a part of the team. He's brought a tremendous amount of expertise, and we're going to talk a lot about some of the things that we've even done internally as a means for you to make the connection between Sachs and your business. Even though you may be a manufacturer distributor and we're a professional services organization, there's a tremendous amount of overlap in terms of systems that you really want to have in place. So let's go to the next slide, Alex, and talk about some of these key areas. So again, the question that's posed most to me from a financial perspective is I need to make an investment. I know I need to make an investment. Where do I do it? Kind of what does it cost? And in the end, am I really adding the value to the enterprise that I think I am? Because, when I think about why I invest in technology, again, a lot of it's about security, but a lot of it is also about making the business more attractive to the outside. And when we talk about a lot, and we talked about this with Jerome last time as well, about what it is that adds value, what it is that adds value to the business. So first thing I want to talk about is, very high level, John. I think, everybody thinks they know, but do they really know? What's the differences between what is an accounting system? What is it? We use the the acronym ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, warehouse management software. Are these all integrated? When I buy one system, do I expect that it does it all? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? And Rob, please chime in as well, of course.
Yeah. Perfect. So generally when companies start out, they need something to do basic bookkeeping, and they'll use an accounting system that will let them issue simple invoices, that will let them receive in their bills. They can keep track of their bank. And for a lot of people, that's a really, really simple need to start out with. And that's the accounting system. And a lot of people rely on that for some time in that kind of startup and growth phase of the business. But then as the business grows, you get into the world of process, because you need things to be repeatable. You need things to operate in a consistent way across the environment. And that's when you come into the land of the ERP. So land of ERP talks about common processes across the company. So order to cash, how you manage the end-to-end process from engaging with your customer to sending out an invoice. Procure to pay, how you buy materials, how you buy different services, how you make sure that you're paying your bills on time. Record to report, how you can see your data in real time across all of your business. So one of the big differences we see is accounting systems are one of many little applications that are in a business. You'll see an ERP goes across the breadth of the business. And then this brings us into warehouse management systems. So a lot of companies will start with very simple needs. They've got some boxes. They know where to go and pick up the box. They know what to do. But then as the business scales and grows, they're managing complex inventory. They need to get the right thing on the right trucks. They might have assemblies come together. So there's this physical component that you need to optimize as you go through. So the basic accounting system is something that just lets you pay bills, issue invoices.
And John, I don't mean to cut you off, but could you give an example of a software that you would consider an accounting system? I know a lot of folks probably use QuickBooks or Peachtree. Is that what you're referring to when you talk about an accounting system?
Absolutely. I would say QuickBooks, Sage, a bunch of those are just purely for accounting purposes only. They don't go beyond into the business. They don't talk about those wider processes. And that's how you know you've grown beyond your accounting system, is that you have to put a lot of manual things around it to connect your business and get visibility into the data, because you need insight across all of the enterprise. You need to know where things are in the warehouse. You need to know where things are in your supply chain. An accounting system is only going to tell you what debit balance or credit balance that you have.
Right, that's great. Rob, obviously there's lots of other systems and softwares. What are some other common things that people have, or if they don't have, should really consider? Oh, can't hear you, boss.
Well, that's what happens when you try to talk on mute, right? And think this far after COVID, I'd be better at it. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of starting to delve into the second point on the slide here, right? John's made some really good points around just the maturity factor, and I've seen this myself, right? At our last firm that I worked for, we went from having what I'll call an accounting system on a very old version of Sage, right? And we had to make the jump to NetSuite, right? To get much more feature rich and we looked at it in this concept of like platform software, right? So in the next bullet, I kind of talk a lot about this concept of SaaS versus the world. And I think within that topic, there's this other concept and idea around platform consolidation, right? So we see this, and it's a big thing I've been preaching here. I know like a lot of people here have heard me talk about this right for the last 6 months here. It's software sprawl exists. And what that means is people go out and they buy software that solves a problem, right? And when you're small, you're growing up, that makes a ton of sense, right? I got a big problem, I need to solve that problem. I go find something that does that, right? Whether it's
and that's what you would call still off the shelf.
Yeah. So this is when you're delving into like people, process, and technology, right? You have a business problem. What do? You go solve it with adding human resources to solve the problem. You go after a process to solve the problem, or you implement some form of technology or something across all three, right? But as you get more mature in your sort of IT roadmap, what you should be doing is looking at the idea of consolidation, right? And the example I use on this is like everybody has a garage or a basement in their house that's full of stuff, right? Where you go down there and you're like, oh man, we got to clean up this garage. We got to clean up the crawl space in our basement, whatever it is. But then you go in there and you're like, there's a tennis racket in there that hasn't been touched in 10 years, and you refuse to throw it away because you may play tennis in the next 6 months, but everybody knows you're never going to do it, right? That there would be a much better thing to do, which would be to have a garage sale, consolidate all the money you make from that garage sale, and go buy yourself a gym membership or a personal trainer for 6 months to get better use of that resource, right? So the same is true with technology. We end up, as firms or companies evolve, they end up filling up their garage with software, right? And ERP solutions and WMS solutions are platform plays, which means you're going to get better bang for your buck through consolidation and expanding the use of a single platform versus having 10 different softwares doing 10 different point solutions. Right. So that's kind of like a concept and idea that I talk about a lot, and it's something that we can do as well. We do it internally and we do it externally, where we can come in and we can kind of assess the state of what I'll call application sprawl. And we partner with John to help people make the transition from the kind of point solution, the accounting software, to a true business platform with an ERP or combination of ERP and WMS.
With things happening so fast today, how often should a business be assessing its their sprawl, to kind of use your word?
Right. So things are moving very fast. In IT, right, there's this like typically a 3 to 5 year window is viewed as kind of every time the next big event will happen, right? So right. We're all living in what I'll call the AI age right now, or the early stages of it. And before this, it was cloud, and before that it was virtualization, and before that it was the kind of monolithic mainframe age, right?
Right.
The truth of the matter is that everything we've seen has happened before and will likely happen again, right? IT is very, very cyclical. Now, everyone tends to think and agree that when things like cloud or AI, they become very big buzzwords in the industry, right? I call it marketecture, right? Where the marketing people, and sorry for the SACS marketing people that organize this event, they latch on to something that's working in the public eye. It gets out of control. And I'll have people think about, AI, think about how cloud has evolved, right? Cloud can mean 20 different things. It depends on.
And I was going to ask you that, Rob, if you back up 2 seconds, right? Just thinking about entry-level tech people, we talk about the cloud. My first question is, where is it? Right. And what is it? And I know we've made a push to put everything in the cloud.
Yeah.
What's the benefit of doing that versus, you know, the old server room or whatever it might be?
Yeah, so the answer is it depends. But you know, I'm a big believer of software as a service kind of versus the world, which is why we have this tagline in here. And you know, I've seen people try to explain what is the cloud. The cloud is a lot of different things, and it depends on the use case. What it really means to me is I'm not in the hardware business anymore. Okay, so you just described a server room, a data center. You know, some people have their own data center. Some people have, you know, co-location facilities, which is very similar to what Saks has. We are now 100% cloud company, but that doesn't mean that we don't have instances of servers, as an example. We just don't host them. So my definition of cloud means who's hosting the application you're using versus not. And again, we've seen this movie before. Hosting has been around for a really, really long time. The concept of cloud is maybe 10 years old, right? So as it relates to Saks, our position and my position as a CIO is we should try to go to software as a service first, which means we don't host the application. The vendor hosts the application. We subscribe to that application, and all we're responsible for is our user logins and making sure that they conform to our security policy. They use multi-factor authentication. Hopefully they let us use single sign-on, right? But we don't control custody of the data. The vendor does, right? And that's a very, very salient point. When you talk about security, the chain of custody of data really matters. The more you own, the more responsibility you have to protect that data from bad actors, right? So the worst case scenario is you have your own hardware in a closet in your office or in a data center. You're hosting an application and you're hosting the data. You have chain of custody of that data. You receive that data. You're storing it. For as long as you're storing it, you have responsibility to protect that data from a security perspective, right? The next version would be I take my applications, I still own them, and I host them in a what I'll call a hyperscaler. That would be something like AWS or Azure from Microsoft or Google Cloud, where you're renting time on hardware in their offering versus owning the hardware. That's kind of like we go from good to better. Best would be I don't own any of it. I subscribe based on consumption to that application platform. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about SaaS versus the world. These are things that need to be considered though, because there's costs associated with good, better, and best, like anything, right?
Why don't you go into that why don't you go into that?
Yeah, so you know, there's a big perception in the world that cloud is more expensive than hosting yourself, right? And the truth is, it depends. It can be much more expensive depending on the use case, but it can also be like a release of burden, right? When I'm talking about this chain of custody and responsibility of owning data, there's cost associated with that too. So some of the hard costs versus soft costs is where it starts to get muddy, and that's, you know, kind of the last bullet we have on the screen is what that's talking about is what's your total cost of ownership of chain of custody and the security around the data versus what's your return on investment? Are you getting really good revenue per employee, right? Are you getting good utilization out of your employees? Are you getting good returns from your customers, right? Everybody, if you're in business, I have to assume you have customers, right? How are you continuously driving technical advantage to get a leg up on your competitors, to keep your employees happy, right? That's employee experience, client experience, right? These concepts and ideas need to be constantly thought about and reviewed from the lens of someone like, you know, a CIO, right? Somebody needs to be consulting with you. And if you don't have these people in your organizations, the good news is we can offer sort of like fractional access to that, right? John and I both do virtual CIO work for other companies where they come in and we do roadmaps and we do assessments, and we don't necessarily sit there all day long and, you know, play with keyboards and do, you know, day-to-day work on their environments, but we help them roadmap out, okay, here's where you are today, here's where you should be in a year, and we continuously look at it sort of every quarter or 6 months or on a yearly basis, where we're looking at what does a digital roadmap for your company look like? Are you actually getting as much return on your IT investment as you should be? Right?
So Rob, just as a follow-up question, you mentioned two things, and I wonder if they're similar in nature or they're very different. You talked about ownership of your data, and you talked about security. Are they the same thing or no?
Well, yeah. Now we're talking about single source of truth and data integrity, right?
All right.
Which is so. If you let data go everywhere and everybody you don't have any control over it, you definitely aren't going to have good security, right? You also you're not going to be extracting anything from your data that's going to help your business move forward, right? And I think this is where companies either get technical advantage or they start to fall behind. The concept and idea is, if you have garbage coming in, right? People aren't inputting data about your clients, about the communications with your clients, right? About projects you're working on, about opportunities that you want to go after with the clients. You can't feed other systems to go do things like heat maps on what offerings do I have, and are my clients actually consuming those offerings from me, right? Like Saks is a great example. We don't just do tax work, right? We do a whole bunch of other things. I think what we do is we constantly look at our client base versus our data, and we say, how can we help our clients better? Because it's going to be mutually beneficial. Obviously, we can go offer, and it's why we say, like, we're an advisory company more than anything. We want to get in and help people solve business problems, right? You can't ignore IT as it relates to business problems anymore, whether it's tax work, audit work, wealth management, whatever we're coming in to offer. It all ties back to, are we getting the best bang for our buck out of the spend that you're inevitably going to have, right? Nobody operates on paper anymore. We're not, it's the way the world is now. Everybody's digital all the time. So weighing the value of spend versus the kind of like what's coming in from an offering perspective from your clients consuming your services is really, really important. And I think a lot of people overlook it. They don't realize the two are very tied together. You can offer a much better client experience to get more revenue, and you can also have a much better end user experience inside your company to keep your retention high, attract better talent to your company, right? Like, I can tell you, none of the young people coming out of college want to work at a company that's shuffling paper around, right? They won't take those, and if they do take the job, they won't stay very long. So they want their personal life experience and their work experience to feel more similar, right? It's so easy to use these things, right? You just load it up. You don't need to be a brain surgeon to use an iPhone, right? Everybody uses them all day long. When you go to work and you log into your laptop, it shouldn't be like, I need to have a PhD to do my job, right? It should be, I can log in, my applications work. Oh, this is simple and easy, right? It's why we've done things at Saks, like implement single sign-on, right? I don't want people to have to log in manually to every single application with a different password. It doesn't make any sense.
Right? Yeah, it makes sense to me. John, let's back up to you for a second. So, taking everything Rob said and kind of bringing it back to the ERP and WMS world, what does it look like in that space in terms of SaaS versus your traditional, people installing, software on their machines, things of that nature?
So it's really interesting, and it builds on what Rob said. So nowadays there's all different applications are available. So people go and they buy all different tools, and to get the business done, they end up stitching together this quilt, this patchwork of different steps, manual steps, or death by 1,000 spreadsheets trying to get the work done. So there's an application here, there's an automation, somebody has to enter it, there's a mistake. It's death by 1,000 spreadsheets. It's death by 1,000 little manual steps that if one of them fails, it impacts the delivery of your service. So what cloud means is that you concentrate on your core business, you concentrate on your processes, and you let specialist companies put platforms in place that will do the common tasks. So they will do the process of how you issue an invoice. You're in the business of doing your business. You shouldn't be in the business of developing accounting software or developing process. So the move to the cloud frees up companies. It frees them up to use the best practices that are developed across the industry and just concentrate on how they do things better themselves. It takes them out of the business of maintaining a patchwork of little applications that don't work together, and they get one pool of data in one place as one version of the truth. And that lets you make smarter decisions, makes you be faster, gives you one line of sight into where you can improve your operations, and it brings down your cost and complexity. So the cloud frees up businesses to concentrate on what they do for core.
John, would you say that all ERP software today is SaaS, or is there any old traditional legacy, you call it what you want, systems that still exist today? And I know we've been on calls with clients that are still operating on DOS-based systems and still print on green bar paper. I mean, what do you say to those folks when you have these conversations?
So the first thing is that there's a lot of words used. Cloud is used like salt and pepper on a meal, and sometimes it has no relevance to the underlying taste. And part of what we look at is what's truly there. Where you have systems that are running on old DOS or old operating systems, it's a recipe for disaster. It's high risk because the hardware moves on every 18 months. Software moves on, and things that you've relied on for years and years might just not be supported anymore. If you look at QuickBooks, the vendor made the decision to stop using QuickBooks Desktop. That creates a security risk to your business, and it means that everybody's getting clobbered with malware and with ransomware. So running on these old platforms is a risk. It's like walking into the middle of a freeway with your eyes closed, with your hope high that you're going to make it to the other side. It's not necessarily a very good proposition. We see a lot of people who claim that they are SaaS-based ERP, and you have to take a look under the covers, and you'll find that they're still old client-server architectures. You'll find that they're not truly in the cloud. Cloud means it exists across multiple data centers. It is not reliant on any one particular piece of infrastructure. So we find that certain vendors advertise that they're cloud, but when you look underneath it and you ask questions, where are your servers? Do you need something on site? You talk about their teams, you find that they're really, as Rob said, they're just hosting. They're not cloud. Cloud is about availability, high availability of the systems, 24/7, 365, high levels of security, access control, operating at a level up there. So all things are not created even. If you look at SaaS at SAP, they have a version called SAP One Business. It's just a carve up of a bigger system. It's not a standalone instance for a company. If you look at some of the other providers, they're not truly cloud, and they are as open to the failures as anyone else. So to Rob's earlier point, you got to look under the covers and see what's really there.
So let me ask you guys this in kind of conclusion on this topic and going to the next topic. What is the biggest misconception? I'm going to ask each one of you the same question. Biggest misconception of the cloud that people have today when they say, I don't trust this cloud, I don't know where it is. I would think if my stuff is on the internet, people would have easier access than if I still held that server close to me at night. What do you say to that?
So Rob, you're on mute again.
Not good. For me, like, I think the biggest misconception about cloud is that it's more complex and more expensive than doing it the old-fashioned way, right? And a lot of people also think the newer versions of whatever software they're running, they're going to lose some feature or functionality by going to the new cloud offering than they would. And I think a lot of salespeople on the vendor side do a poor job of articulating the transition from, you know, client server architecture like John was talking about to a completely, you know, web-based solution or SaaS-based solution. And there's a lot of like it's because of the architecture, right? Because they've oversimplified the messaging about cloud, it has actually overcomplicated what it is in the background, right? And it can be very complicated if you want it to be, but it can also be easy to consume and simple for most people if they partner with the right people to help make the transition.
Right. Got it. John, what do you think?
I find a very strange thing out there. Everybody has a phone, everybody has their photos, and in their personal life, they're very comfortable in the cloud, right? Where are the photos? They're in the cloud. Where's this? You know, where's the stuff from the wedding? It's in the cloud. And the biggest misconception is people go, we can't really put our business in the cloud. We must have it in our local data centers. It's too important. We can't have it in the cloud. The cloud
I
is
think all three of us probably have a Gmail address, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
What do you think Gmail is? You're putting all of your email in the cloud. So how many of you email your personal accountant all of your bank information every year for your taxes through email?
Yeah,
I bet a lot of people, not Saks customers, because we use safe portals, right? But the reality is a lot of people do that, and a lot of people will send all kinds of stuff, their social security number in plain text over Gmail. Gmail is in the cloud, right? You're not hosting that in your bedroom. You know, you don't have a private server in your bedroom that sends emails, you know, securely out over the internet, right? You're hosting that all in the cloud. You're logging at chase.com. That is a SaaS application that you are logging into in the cloud, right? It's their cloud, but it's a SaaS application, right? So what's your definition of safe? Right. To me, it comes down to chain of custody of the data and like who's actually responsible, because like everyone is at risk every single day of getting hacked, whether you're an individual or a corporation. It's just how protected are you and how prepared are you for inevitably when that day comes.
So Rob, that's perfect. Let's kind of transition to the next topic. And we talked about buzzwords, and I'm going to throw this one out there for you because I think it's so generic and everybody seems to think they know what it means. Is cybersecurity, right? Like I'm secure. I got an antivirus or whatever. Rob, what is cybersecurity? John, what is cybersecurity? You know, and what do you do? Where do you start?
Well, you know, like I've said it a lot on the webinar already. Like the way I think about it first is chain of custody of data, right? So if you have sensitive data, whether it's your personal data or company data or client data coming into your company, where's the chain of custody of that data and how's it coming in and out of the system, right? So that's number one. Number two would be around obviously, I think there's very basic stuff in cybersecurity that a lot of people overlook: multi-factor authentication and complex passwords being the number one thing. If you go talk to any security expert, the first thing they're going to say to you is use complex passwords. I recommend everybody use a password manager if you don't have one, like LastPass, OnePass. There's a whole load of them out there. Sometimes your phone, you know, your phone bill will give you access to one, or so a lot of people have it and they don't even know they have it. But even using the inherent ones on Apple devices, right? The keychain, that kind of stuff is really good. Don't use your dog's names, 2024 exclamation point as a password. And any opportunity you have to log into anything sensitive, like your bank accounts, use the multi-factor authentication. It takes one more second. It will prevent a lot of bad things from happening, okay? Then number two, the next kind of thing from a corporate perspective is control of your endpoints, because endpoints like laptops, right? Anywhere people can access the data that you have chain of custody of, you want that device protected so that in the event it is compromised, that you can ring fence that and stop anything bad from happening as quickly as possible. But really to summarize, cybersecurity is a multi-layered thing that needs to be looked at constantly. You need to train your employees, because most often it's not, it's the employees that are targeted to get access to your systems through social engineering and phishing and sending links and emails and stuff like that, right? So having a highly educated workforce will prevent a lot of problems. Having good endpoint security will solve a lot of problems, and having multi-factor logins with complex passwords will protect against most things, right? But then you got to have a plan. You got to have a table. Every company should have a table talk exercise with what are you going to do. It's like at your house, right? You should tell your kids, if there's an event in the house and there's an emergency, here's where we're all going to meet, right? That's a basic table talk exercise. If there's a fire, get out of the house. Don't worry about the dog. Go to this spot. Mommy and daddy will meet you over here, right? That's a very basic version of what all companies should do. In the event you have a catastrophe, what are you going to do? And a cyber event is a catastrophe, right? The same way if a tornado hits the building that you operate on, right? You should have a plan built for the day that hopefully never comes.
Right.
And I think to build on that, a lot of cybersecurity is just about common sense. And these are the things that you really should be thinking about. So you want to make sure that your data is encrypted and that you have.
What does that mean, John? Encrypted.
So encrypted means that if somebody tries to access your device without having any passwords or security, they can just go in and scan your machine. So cybersecurity, as Rob said, is in layers, and it's what's called defense in depth. So if they make it through one door, they can't get through the next. So in terms of encryption, all devices should have an encryption key so that only you can access it. If somebody else comes in, all the data is scrambled underneath. So if somebody finds your phone, they can open the phone, they can read the hard disk inside of it, but unless they know your magic code, they can't read it. So you make sure that only you can access the data that you should, the people should only be able to access the data that they need to be able to access.
Right.
You should have layers. So in the layers talk about different passwords for different things. So if somebody tries to break into your house, right, if they can't get through the front door because it's locked, you got to make sure the back door is locked, right? As you go through these different things, as Rob said, you need to have different passwords. You need to change things around every once in a while. You can't have the same password for 3 years in a row. You should change your passwords all the time. So it's common sense things.
Yeah.
And it goes to the other question of what are you good at and what are you not? So there's a lot of complexity, as Rob said, in cybersecurity. You're not an expert at it. So give it to the people who know how to do this. We rely on Microsoft and Google and all of those to protect us online. For your enterprise, you should work with a third party who knows how to do firewalls, encryption keys, all that kind of stuff. So it's common sense. You don't leave your door open, unlocked. You can't do that anymore. Somebody will come in and steal your stuff. And even if you leave the door unlocked on the front door, you've got the different rooms in your house locked. And then you have your jewelry in the safe.
What do you guys say to someone who says, look, I'm just a small business. Does somebody really want my stuff? Like shouldn't they go after something much bigger? What do you guys say to that when that question comes up?
I mean, look, I've seen it from 2 guys in a coffee pot up to Fortune 50 companies. The bad actors do not discriminate. They fish with giant nets. They do things like dark web scanning on companies in bulk. So if your outward facing security posture is very bad, you get added to a list and they start attacking you. And people don't think of this the right way. It's not a person sitting at a computer typing away trying to get into your environment. They're running algorithmic programs, scripts, now AI. They're using computers to brute force attack their way in. or brute force, socially engineer or phish their way in, which means they're sending you fake emails, click this link, download this file. They're showing up physically at people's offices dressed up as UPS workers trying to get into IT closets to get to plant devices, right, in networks. And they're planting seeds and letting them sit, and then they're acting sometime later. It's not a instantaneous thing. So
Right.
I personally don't believe that size of client matters. I've heard lately that the bad actors are actually sharing information on the dark web about who has insurance policies, and they're specifically targeting companies that have big insurance policies because they're like, well, they're going to pay. If we can get in and lock them out, they're going to pay because the insurance company is going to cover it. So there's no rhyme or reason. They're fishing with a giant net. Everyone is a target. If you're a US based company, you are a target for these people. And the best way to protect them is to protect yourself is to implement good practices and educate your employees. And we're not talking about millions of dollars of investment to do that, right? It's generally speaking for small companies, this needs to become part of people's budgets. Like they have to. It's 2024. You can't ignore it anymore. If you ignore it, you are basically saying, I accept the fact that one day in the very near future, I'm going to have a very bad day or month, or I may go out of business, right? If your IT systems aren't set up properly to deal with the inevitable, companies go out of business from these events.
So there's a couple of things that happen. So in the dark web, there's different levels of criminal who are looking to execute. So you've state actors, they're looking to attack big companies, they're looking to disrupt. You have small criminals who are looking to rip you off for the $20 you have in your bank account and in your 529 plan. A lot of small companies get targeted because of who their clients are. So the amount of breaches that happen because as a small company, you have no security, but you go onto the side of a big client, and that's the back door into them taking out a large corporation. So they tend to look at this at different levels, and a small company is different food for different fish. The big sharks are interested in knowing what company you can get them into. One company we know was a large insurance broker. They got hacked because an IT developer didn't have strong passwords, and basically it took down a large insurance company. A couple of 100 million records were taken. That attack was led by a state actor who wanted to get at the details of defense contractors and their employees so they could do espionage. But what happened was that data got sold on to lower level criminals who were going after people's 529Ks and to do phishing. So to Rob's point, nobody's too big, nobody's too small. You're a victim to somebody unless you protect yourself.
That's great. That's great. So, Rob, John, to kind of wrap up that section, is there anything additional you want to add to that, or did we cover?
No, I think, the one thing I would say is like, you should ask a lot of questions. And the good news is like, you have access to everybody who's on this webinar, right? If you're a client of Josh or any partner at the firm and you want to have a conversation about, hey, I just want to bounce some things off somebody, like that's what we're here for. So, and if we can't solve the problem for you, I promise you, we probably know somebody who does. And that's the kind of value that we want to bring as an organization, as a trusted advisor, is making the connections and helping people move their businesses forward and grow, right? It's in our best interest for all our clients to get bigger and badder and awesome, right? Like we want that. We don't want our customers getting hacked and put out of business. That would be bad. So
that would be the worst.
We're here to help, and between myself, my team, John, I mean, we're talking about 100 years of combined experience in this space, and a lot of this is new. You don't necessarily like. It's okay not to know it, right? Shouldn't be embarrassed to ask the questions and reach out. And we like talking about it. So come find us. We're happy to share our experience with you guys, the good and the bad, right? And we'll be honest about where you are in your own journey and where you can spend the dollars you do have in the most effective way.
Yeah, and John, I want to just I want to give you the chance to talk a little bit about Alex, if you go back one, just AI. I know we talked a couple times ago about AI as it relates to warehouse automation and WMS, but John, where do you see it going in with respect to financial operation software?
So AI is two or three different things. The first thing AI rather is automation. So it's automation of tasks and how you can free up your people and your talent to do more high-end work. So that's the first thing. And AI is available you find a lot of these enterprise platforms now provide AI where it will automate the tasks. There's systems out there like Bill.com that provide you with different levels of automation. You move into other platforms where they learn, and they're learning about your business, and they're giving you better insights, and they're helping you predict different ways that the market will move in your business. So everything from demand planning, in warehousing, for example, AI will track the boxes that move around and then enable you to do demand planning based on what goes in and what comes out. So the key across all of these things is your data. And if the data is good, AI is immeasurably powerful. It lets you automate what's going on. It learns what you're doing. And then by using that learning, it enables you to make faster, better decisions. Going back to the original question, what's an accounting system and what's an ERP and what's a warehouse system? Accounting systems don't tend to learn. The ERPs have components of AI that allow you to take insight that will drive your business. And to improve your warehouse operations, AI is a critical feature these days to help you integrate with your 3PLs, find your equipment better, and lay out your operations in a better way. So as it comes along, AI is a strategic tool for you to use. If you do not adopt AI, I think that is a competitive risk, and it's something that will slow it down, and it will definitely put you behind your competitors because they are adopting AI. So ignoring it is not an option.
That's great. And Rob, just with respect to AI outside of financial operations, I know we have these conversations all the time, but where do you see it going in terms of, from your perspective, thinking about a business like ours?
I think it's repeatable task is like the first thing that AI really solves for. And what people are used to right now is sort of predictive things. Like a lot of the chat bots you talk to on websites are now either AI backed or at least partially backed. Anywhere where you have an item in your business where a human being is following a logic tree. So, and this generally starts with lower level like employees or entry level employees. If you have people doing data entry, as an example, that is a prime example where pretty simply, even today, you can go out and build an AI model that will do that for you, right? Using a language model as an example. So I challenge people all the time. I'm like, in outsourcing models, this is another great example. If you're offshoring business, the example I use, if it costs you $30 an hour to do it onshore and it costs you $7 an hour to do it offshore, it will cost you $1 an hour to do it with AI, and the AI will never take a vacation, will never complain, and will always follow the directions you give it exactly to the T, right? But what it will not do is figure out what it should do in the event you haven't told it what to do, right? And I find that that's like where people fall down with this. We haven't reached, whatever sci-fi movie you've watched lately, right? We're not in Skynet or any of these other like crazy situations where AI is aware of anything, right? It's not. It's just it might feel like it is because of the language models existing like ChatGPT, and people are now have access to Copilot and other things. Like you see it and you're like, wow, this feels like I'm talking to a person. You're not. You're talking to something that's been highly trained to seem like a person, right?
Yep.
But even ChatGPT, which I've spent a lot of time with since it's come out, and I built some pretty cool things in it, it's still not as great as people think it is. It gives wrong answers all the time. You really have to double check what you're doing with it. And the best versions of it are the ones that you've actually spent time with, right? It's like, go back to a children analogy. If you don't spend any time with your kids, they're not going to like you, and you're not going to like them. If you spend a lot of time with them, and they probably turn out to be the kids you want them to be, right? Most time. It's the same thing with AI. So if you're thinking about AI, I love talking about it, probably more than anything else. There's some really great use cases out there, and there's some really bad ones, like where I've seen people go down massive rat holes and waste tons of money and time to get nowhere. But there's some really cool stuff that can be looked at. And I think the big transition that's going to be hard for people is, in order to make AI really valuable in your organization, you're trading off human resources for computer resources. And for a lot of like family-owned businesses, or if you've grown up your business and hired all your friends, and all of a sudden you're like, well, I can do this work for a quarter of the price with AI. Are you going to be willing to have that conversation with your cousin Susie in the office that you don't really need her anymore? The only way to look at that the other way is to think of it as a repurpose of resources. Do you have other things that Susie could be doing rather than the data entry every day, right? Things like AP processing, right? AP processing 2 years from now is not going to be a human being activity. It's the invoices are going to come in, they're going to get read by the AI, they're going to get put in the general ledger. All a human being is going to do is check that work. They're not going to be doing any sort of entry on that.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
We're there now. Just people just
Sure.
haven't figured out they can do it yet.
Yeah, I think that's right. There seems to be just a general hesitation towards change in general, right? Whether that be technology or everything else. But you made a good point. You said, you're talking about time. Time is money. Obviously, money is money. When we talk about investment, obviously the hope is, just going back to your house analogy before, you put money in the house, you hope it increases the value. I guess my question for each of you is obviously the spend looks different for everybody based on their budget, based on their size, but give me just general parameters as to how you guys look in your individual areas, right? So John, ERP, tech, and Rob, just more general IT operations, things like that. What should people be thinking about in terms of budget? And how do you prioritize spend, and what does that spend look like towards overall value? So John, let me start with you.
So typically, as a benchmark, you should be looking for the technology cost to run your back office being somewhere around 2% as percentage of revenue. And that's been a consistent benchmark over the time. Then you're layering on some of your financial operations around that, but 2 to 2.5% as a percentage of revenue is a good benchmark. One of the pitfalls that people do is they just look at the cost of the IT platform. What you need to do is to basically work out all the steps of the process, put a blended hourly rate to it, and multiply it by the number of times that task happens. And what you'll find is that when people add up the true cost of operations, it's coming in at 3, 4, 5, 6%, right? Because they don't see it, because they look at just, oh, that's a system is expensive. But if you look at what the true cost of operations are, you're going to get savings of between 2 and 4% if you move to these central enterprise platforms. The same is true as you start extending out into your wider supply chain. So again, you can reduce your overall cost. You can also improve your efficiency, which gives you an ROI improvement as well as a TCO improvement.
That's great.
Oh,
Rob,
you know what's hilarious about this? While John was talking, I went into one of my GPTs that I built over the years, and I asked it the exact question you just asked us, right?
yeah.
So I asked it two different questions. What is the typical budget for IT for a medium-sized business in terms of percentage of revenue? And the answer it came back with, it was right in line with what John says. It says it's generally between 2 and 6% of revenue, but it depends on several factors. One, what industry, obviously tech focus or data intensive industries like finance or healthcare often allocate higher percentage to IT, sometimes even exceeding 6% if they're, like, let's say they're building a technology platform, right?
Right.
The growth stage of the company, like, are they in a growth mode, or are they trying to sustain and support scalability, or are they trying to hold the line? And then the last one would be, are they heavily in a digital transformation phase, like what we've just gone through with cloud migrations and cybersecurity, right? You may have a bigger budget this year than you will next year because you're making investments. And then I asked it the same question, well, what about a small business? And it says basically the same thing, with just slightly lower percentages, right? Like companies under than 100 employees will typically between 1 and 4% of total revenue. But then you get into the same concept, like, are they tech intensive? What's the size and complexity of the business? You know, how much cloud adoption have they had? Have they done anything with cybersecurity? But so there you go. I mean, I just leveraged AI to kind of validate the answers that we're talking about here live. And that's on the latest version of ChatGPT that I pay for. So that's kind of cool. I think that's cool.
Very cool. Well,
that's cool.
That's it. Well, I want to thank you guys for your time. A lot of insight. My head is spinning, but really good information. John, Rob, final thought for the group.
John, why don't you go and then I'll close.
So I think it's all about concentrating on core. To grow your business, scale your business, get the best experience for your customers out there, you want to concentrate on what you do best. You're not in the business of developing accounting software and financial controls. You go to other experts to do that, and you should use expert systems to do that. So concentrate on core, rely on others to do the rest, and then use the tools that are there that are developed by the specialists, such as cloud, such as AI, as ways to maximize the value of your business.
Awesome. All right, Rob, floor is yours.
Yeah, that was really good. I was tempted to go ask ChatGPT, how should I wrap up this? No, I think, look, it all comes down to, like, from our perspective at Saks, is we want to be advisors. We don't want to be branded solely as being your accountant, right? Like, we want to be able to offer high value services to our clients, and not every single minute of every single day is going to be something we charge for, right? Like, we want to actually create value. And I'm hoping that, you know, throughout the course of this conversation we've all just had, that you're thinking about us a little bit differently, right? When I think about the branding associated with Saks, that you start to think of us in the technology realm as well. And again, we've got some really great resources that some on this call, some not, where we can come and we can offer that advice, right? And we're going to be totally objective and honest with you, to point you in the right direction as it relates to cloud, security, AI, all the big buzzwords everybody wants to talk about. Like, we've seen it. We've seen your industry specifically at some point, and we can bring those kind of ideas together to give you the best bang for your buck, whether you're spending 1% on your IT budget or all the way up to the 6% that ChatGPT says you should. I hope it's 6% and you want to spend it all with Saks Technology, but at the end of the day, even if it's 1%, you want to get the best you can out of it. And sometimes getting a second set of eyes on whatever you're doing is really valuable. So I would implore all of you to reach out and let's have a conversation.
Yeah, it's a great point, Rob. And as much as I'll say it on the accounting and tax side as well, is that the industry has become so complicated that it's impossible for one person to know everything about everything. You can certainly say that about technology today. And it's not about having a one-man IT shop anymore. It's about having a partnership and a group of people who can come together to give you the best insights. So again, Rob, John, thank you so much. Rob and John will be a part of our conference on November 1st. There has been information that has been circulated about signing up. You can always reach out directly to me for more information, and we'll see you guys November 1st. Thanks so much. Take care.
Take care.
Bye, everybody.